For those of you who don't know, my name is Roxanne Harrell. I'm the Legislative Director of Rich Straight Ahead. And I am working in Harrisburg to pass a bill that would allow your loved ones to come home who have second degree sentences. And tonight, hopefully, we'll be able to talk a bit about the legislative landscape and where the bills are. We're here because of the Supreme Court decision that declared all second degree mandatory life without parole sentencing unconstitutional. We've been working hard to try to get a bill across the finish line, and we're going to keep working hard until that happens, right? So, yeah, we would just want to be here so that you guys can get all the updated information. And yeah, yesterday we were in Harrisburg. Some of you were able to join us. I can see, some of you were there with us yesterday. And we had a really good time. I think, it was a really powerful day. We had a lot of legislative meetings. I believe that we met with over 25 legislators. And then we also had a rally and a press conference. We've already gotten, a little bit of press coverage, but hopefully we get more. Joanne said you're having audio feedback. Can everyone hear me just okay?
Yeah, your audio is fine,
Okay.
Roxanne.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, I have my toddler in the background and she's complaining about something. So I'm gonna trying to see you might be hearing her as well. So yeah. So we had a really powerful day. People were able to do an impromptu visit to the majority leader's office. And overall, I think, these are the types of, things that we need to push our legislators in order to do this kind of work. And so at this time, I do want to pass it to my colleague, Sean Damon, to give, a little bit more in detail about the legislative landscape. And and after that, hopefully we can answer some questions that you all.
Right. Hey, all. Give me 1 second. I'm going to get on camera. I'm sorry. Taking me a second to get situated. I actually am just on my way back from Harrisburg and just got into my house. But the update. So the update on the Harrisburg landscape in general and trying to pass a bill is that, as many of y'all know, as soon as this ruling came down, we shot right into action. We had been working on a bill for years that was sponsored by Chairman Briggs, and we hit the ground running. We talked to every legislator that we know, everybody in the building, and started trying to move this thing. But we quickly, I think, as a lot of people on this call know, we quickly hit an impasse, right? And the impasse that we hit in Harrisburg in the very beginning of this was, just to put it simply, there are a lot of people in political power that are not that brave, right? And this was reflected a bit in what we are seeing with people in the leaderships of both parties in both chambers of the General Assembly, is that they were kind of sitting on their hands, watching, waiting to see what the other side would do on this. And we're concerned about how this would track to elections, right? I think, just as a little bit of grounding and background about what I mean by that exactly, is that there is a razor thin majority for the Democrats in the House. There's a little bit more of a substantial majority for the Republicans in the Senate, but they all have competitive elections this year in swing districts where, it's not a huge margin of votes that decided these races. And they got concerned and they got frozen in this process, and did not do what they ought to have done and what we expect them to have done, right? Which is to actually take a morally clear stance and to really answer the call of what the Pennsylvania Supreme Court laid out in Commonwealth versus Lee, right? That's what we needed them to do. That's what they ought to have done, but that's not what they have done. And we've been in that spot for the most of the time since then, including yesterday. Roxanne mentioned there was a lot of people that gave fiery speeches, and there were some people that impromptu went to try to speak to the majority leader directly, right? So these are all dynamics that are at play. The thing that I want to make really clear to all of you is like, this isn't the end of the story, right? Even though things look bad, even though we're not seeing the kind of political bravery that we would like to see, there is an interesting dynamic and there is a narrow path to still figure something out, because so many people that have skin in the game for one reason or another want to avoid mass resentencings and want something to be done. So a lot of family members on this call, right? A lot of family members across the state who have loved ones in prison with these sentences need something done. Also, the county commissioners, the people that are in charge of running all these counties that are going to have to put resources into mass resentencings, they don't want to deal with those, right? And then importantly, the DAs of all these counties, except for Philadelphia. So Philadelphia left this thing that's called the DAs Association, but everybody, even the Philadelphia DA, the DAs of all these counties, if something better can be done, especially as far as the Philadelphia DA is concerned, something better that can be done than mass resentencing, I think there's an opening there. And then the DAs of all these counties, they don't want to do all the mass resentencings, right? This creates huge liabilities for them. And it also creates a lot of strain on their offices and on the prosecutors that are tasked with doing the resentencings. So it's something they'd like to avoid for a variety of reasons. So I think what we have, just to sum it up, is political leadership in both chambers that is not being brave and is frozen right now. And we have a lot of people from below, like us, and a lot of these county officials, county DAs, county commissioners, other people that are kind of like going to be impacted if there are mass resentencings, that are working to push the political power structure to do something. We still have time on the clock. There's still time to do something. And the pressure is going to kind of ratchet up on the leadership classes and the political leadership in the General Assembly and in Harrisburg generally. So that's where we're at. We're not stopping. We're full steam ahead, and we're going to leave it all in the field. And we're going to do everything that we can to get a bill over the line that brings people home that have been in for a certain amount of time later this year, right? That sets the framework to bring people home soon and to make sure there's a fair sentence going forward. So that's my update for y'all. There's still hope. There's still time on the clock. And we are not going to give an inch. We are going to fight with everything we've got to get something passed that will be better than mass resentencings. Okay? Because mass resentencings will lead to disparate outcomes all across the Commonwealth. There'll be a lot of people that in the counties outside of Philadelphia, especially, they'll get very different sentences. And we're trying to avoid that if at all possible. So I think I've covered it mostly there. Roxanne, do you feel like I've left anything out? I kind of was just kind of getting resituated in my house after the drive. So I don't know if I covered everything that you feel needs to be covered.
No, I think that more or less covers it. I can't think of anything that's missing at the moment.
Okay.
I think, we still have a road ahead of us. I think, we are trying to get consensus between some groups, and,
right.
Hopefully that process works out, right? Right now it's too early to tell, and, we're not able to, give you specifics on what that would look like. But, we have some hope that's possible, right? And we don't want to, and we don't want to give people false hope, right? We don't think it's
That's
impossible, right? And so, I think it's easy to, fall into despair about this stuff because, it's not easy. And the political will is not really there. But I do think, there's enough groups that are going to be pushing, the legislator that do have influence for them to act, right? And that's our hope. That's what we're trying to, do, to have enough outside pressure that, they'll be compelled to act. And and I think every little thing that we're doing is to build that pressure and to get the best solution possible. So, we're not leaving, we're really trying our best to consider everybody in this negotiation process, right? And I think it's going to be something where it's impossible to please 100% of people, right? And I do want people to be mindful that there are things that we have to balance with all of this, right? It's probably not going to look exactly like HB 443, right? And but we're trying not to get too far away from that, and that's
Yep.
that's really our goal. So
and really our North Star
Yeah.
is to make sure that absolutely that nothing gets bargained that would be worse than mass resentencings, right? What's on the table with these other groups is something that is better than what we would get at mass resentencings by the courts. And so we're really we do have that leverage in this moment, that there is this alternative of things going back to the courts, and we are using that to make sure that we get like the best deal possible for everybody if we're able to figure out a path, if we're able to figure out a path.
Yeah. And I assure you we're doing everything we can to figure that out. And right now I do think, there is some level of hope. And with that, I think I'm gonna pass it to my colleague John Rowland to talk about some next steps. Just let me see.
Yeah, can everybody hear me?
Yeah, we hear you, John.
Okay. Well, on my phone here, I'm at something else, but yeah, what's going on? Just wanted to give a few bits of next steps. For folks here in Philly, the next thing we're doing is on Saturday, from 1 to 4 at Triple Bottom Brewing. We're going to have a little get together for families who are newer to this movement, folks who are supporting people inside, formerly incarcerated people. Just as a way to, as you heard, we've got kind of a long road ahead of us and a lot of stuff here. So to build some community around that. And also so people are able to have questions answered, know who to ask if questions can come up. We're dedicated in this work and at our org to making sure that we are constantly building movement and having everybody get the. Sorry, can you all hear me now?
Yeah, you're much better now.
Okay. Yeah, I was just saying, we're very dedicated to making sure that people have answers that they want and also feel like they're not being left out or anything. So yeah, that's the intention of this thing on Saturday, is just to come hang out, build some community, have some fun, eat some food. So hopefully somebody can drop that in the chat right here. And for anybody in the Philly area who is a family member, supporter, someone who's it'll be by Triple Bottom Brewing, which is in North Philly.
We can't feel our cholesterol working, but it's
sorry about the audio issues, yo.
dose for right, supporting it is a clinically backed formula that supports.
Can you all still not hear me?
We can hear you now, but it kept cutting out.
Oh, sorry. So yeah, for folks that aren't in Philly, we're also planning a bunch of different gatherings with a similar purpose, but also will be updates as well for places like Reading, Lancaster, Harrisburg, and a few others, the Lehigh Valley. We're planning those in part to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to fit into what we're doing and to get updated, get involved with the community. But also we want to use that time to talk a little bit about what some of the next steps might be in terms of resentencings and lay some groundwork for, if it does get to that point, us being able to put some pressure locally on district attorneys and other decision makers to try to give our folks the best chance possible at getting out of prison. So those will be still to come, but just for folks who are out in Philly, letting you all know that that's in the works, and we look forward to being able to plan that and do that stuff with you all. And we'll send in letters to people who are inside prison well. We're also going to put out a new mailing to the prison soon. So for people that are supporting people inside, you'll be able to get some new questions answered. And yeah. We also, as always, have Free Our People Coalition that's going to continue to do mass lobbying on this issue. And yeah, everybody who's doing second degree will get this mailing that we're sending out. But yeah, the Free Our People Coalition, who's always doing mass lobbying on this issue, on life without parole as a whole, death by incarceration. Anybody's always invited to come to that, whether it's your 50th time lobbying or your first. And we can also offer trainings, individualized trainings for folks who are new to that and anxious about anything, especially for family members. We just did one last week that some of you all were at. I'd be happy to do more of those. Yeah, I'm going to leave it at that. And I think just generally, like as always, we encourage people to just involved in anything, just start doing anything that's of interest. Doesn't have to be something you feel completely comfortable with. It doesn't have to be something that you think you're going to be amazing at. Just kind of stepping into this community, this movement, will allow you to figure all that stuff out as you go and figure out how you can be useful and powerful as we continue to try to get people home from prison.
Yeah, thank you, John. Emily, can you spotlight me now too? All right, so thank you, John. I think also like we have a little action for people to do, like if you want to contact your legislators. If Liz, if you can put the link in the chat for like, we have already like a populated link where it will send an email automatically to your state legislator if you just fill out the information. Liz or Emily just popped that in the chat. And so it's another action step that you can take if you're interested, and letting your legislator know that this is an issue that is important to you. And so like, keeping them like, the issue on their minds. So I think that's really important. But yeah, I think right now we're going to answer some questions. A lot of you have put some questions in the chat. I'm not sure if we're going to be able to get to all of them, but people are going to, help me, answer some of these questions and bring them to the top. So I did see that there's a question about what is the increasing years above over 25 years suggested in 443 that ALC will support. And so right now we don't have like another draft of the bill or anything like that. So nothing is permanent, but I can say that we won't support anything that is over 30 years. And, at that point we wouldn't support it. Like we've done some like modeling statewide and we believe anything above that would be worse than resentencings. And so like, we wouldn't support anything that's more than 5 years. So more than 25. So that's our red line. And that's a point that we won't go above. But again, nothing has been drafted to that extent, but I think we can say that, we wouldn't support anything that's above that. Can somebody else give me another question? Can we explain what would happen if the bill doesn't pass over 120 days? Like the breakdown of that process. Okay.
I can take that one if there's a baby related issue, Roxana.
Yeah.
So that's a really good question and one that everybody should understand. I know we've talked a lot about the 120 days because it was the most consequential thing that came in the ruling and because we were trying to support the legislation. But what actually happens at the 120 days is that the ruling goes into effect, the Lee case ruling, right? So right now it's been stayed, it's just been paused, like it doesn't exist yet. So once the 120 days passes towards the end of July, then that two things happen. One, the legislature is no longer the only thing that's on the hook for it, right? And two, that means that the courts can start hearing other appeals. And the process through which the fix or the remedy for the lack of constitutionality of the current sentence can be started, we can start working that in the courts. So that's when this kind of movement towards the resentencings might start. But that also will take quite a while. The courts will need to accept an appeal. They'll need to schedule the argument. They'll need to do the argument, and then they'll have to release the ruling on it. So that could take a while, and the legislative part is still going to go on until basically that ruling is released. They're allowed to create a new sentence up until that part. So this, once we reach the 120 days, things will start to get a little bifurcated. There'll be two paths, one legislative, one legal. And that's something that everybody, I think, should be aware of, and hopefully people's loved ones understand that as well. Let me know if there's any follow-up questions or anything from that.
Yeah, there was another one saying, like, what would the timeline look like if, you know, we were to go past the 120 days? Like, how long would it take for their loved one to come out?
That's unfortunately super unknown right now. And that's one of the reasons why we've been pushing the legislation so hard, is that whatever happens, it'll be faster, right? If we were to pass a piece of legislation in the next month, it could go into effect, you know, within a few months or 6 months, they often do in the legislature. And then as soon as that comes through, people can petition for parole that have 25 years or more. So that pathway would be a little clearer in terms of timeline. But the judicial path, the legal path, is totally unknown in terms of timing. For folks that have been following this for a while, you know, it took us years to manage to get the second degree, the Lee case, accepted. And then they took a year and a half to rule on it. That's unusual, and we don't necessarily think that that would happen that long of a gap between the arguments and the ruling again. But we really don't know at all. You know, the steps for that, just to lay them out again so everybody's clear on that, would be after the 120 days are up, the courts are sort of technically open for challenges to retroactivity, because the original ruling goes into effect. And then after that, the courts have to accept, the Supreme Court has to accept one of these appeals and say, all right, we're gonna officially hear this. We'll hear the arguments for retroactivity. And then, yeah, I'll ask this question, just came up too. If 120 days passes, does each inmate have to file an appeal? No, the Supreme Court's just going to hear one appeal on that. They're just going to accept one argument for it. So basically that argument will satisfy the question, what's going to happen retroactively to everybody that has this sentence. So yeah, once the Supreme Court does that, accepts the case, then there still has to be an actual oral argument session, where whoever does the case will be arguing, here's what we think should happen with retroactivity. And then the court will listen to that. And then they also have no timeline for how long it takes for them to rule on that. So there's only a couple steps, but each one there's usually some gap in between. And we really can't say how long that would take. And I think the upside of that is, like, either way, something will happen with it. It's just the timing of it is unfortunate. And that's how these courts just work. Nothing ever goes fast, and it's by design. You know, there's sort of a timidity around trying to make big changes.
Okay. Let's see. Is the preparation being made to get this retroactive once the 120 days passes? So like I said, you know, we are doing our best to pass legislation, but our legal team is preparing, you know, for the scenario that if it doesn't pass, that they will have to file an appeal. And so, like, we are considering all those possibilities. And if that does happen, we're going to be ready. So, Yeah. Next question. You mentioned, can you explain what mass resentencing is? So mass resentencing would mean that everybody who has a second-degree sentence currently in Pennsylvania would have to go through the courts and get a new sentence. So, the Supreme Court declared all of those sentences are unconstitutional. And so that means that, if we don't pass legislation that would go through the parole board, that they would have to go through the courts to get a new sentence. And so that means every single person, the 1,000+ people that are currently incarcerated with second-degree sentences would have to go through the courts, in their counties to get a new sentence. Yeah, so they'll have a schedule for each case for an oral argument, and there's no timeline for the ruling. Yeah, we don't know what the timeline is. So we're, exploring possibilities to make things quicker, hopefully. But, ultimately, it depends on the court and, when they take up the case, how long it takes for them to decide it, and, just how long the process takes in general. And so that's not something that we have control over. What we have control over is, our appeals, like when we file them and the types of appeals that we file, but we don't have control over like the court's timeline. No.
Just a quick follow to that. Everybody will have to file a PCRA to get an individualized resentencing. But that's something that will come down after the Supreme Court steps happen. And everyone inside prison will know about those, and we'll be sure to communicate that to people as well.
Yeah. Okay. Is there another question? If something is passed, what would happen to those with over 30 years in? So depending on the bill and the terms of the bill, like those people most likely would go to the parole board and, hopefully get released, if the parole board decides that they're ready for release. So like, to be clear, like the bill, it's not automatic, right? People still have to go in front of parole. They still have to, the parole board is still going to consider factors, that's going to be, pertaining to their release. And they have to go through that process, and the parole board will decide whether or not they're ready. And so what this bill does is give them an opportunity to go through parole.
So I have a question.
Sure.
Hi, Roxanne. So I heard you say there's a hard stop at 25 years. Is that
No,
25 to life, like the juvenile lifers?
no, there's a hard stop at 30 years. But
At
it would,
30, okay.
yeah, so yeah.
So
Yes. So it's
these
25 to
citizens
life.
would be
So retroactively we cannot put a cap on the parole. So we have to go through another process for that, because it's not constitutional for the legislator to do that. And so that's why it would have like the life tail on the parole. But we are also working on legislation that would hopefully, eliminate that cap sometime in the future, right? So because like right now we have a situation where we already have hundreds of juvenile lifers and people who have been released who have lifetime parole, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
right.
But for now, that's what we have to have in the bill, because the legislature is not really allowed to eliminate that cap.
Oh, wow. Okay. Thank you, Roxanne.
And just to explain that a little bit to Avi and others, I'm sure lots of people will be interested in that. So no one's allowed to give somebody just a new sentence, right? You can't just say your sentence was life and now it's 20 years, right? The way that we were able to work around that is that you can alter the parole code so that somebody is eligible for parole at a certain point. But that's all that we can do in legislation. We can't just give everybody a brand new sentence. But that also explains why the only other option really is individualized resentencings. Because in a similar way, a judge can't say, 50 years ago, you got a life sentence. Today, we're giving you a totally new one. They have to sit down for a brand new resentencing in front of a judge to do that, if that makes sense.
Someone asked a question if someone has a PCR in place, will they have to submit another one? Was that answered? Because I don't think that was.
No, that wasn't answered yet.
Okay. If they have one in place, they could either submit another one or they can request the one that they have submitted. They can request it be amended. So yeah, they would have to submit another one, or they would have to request that their current PCRA be amended. It would probably be more preferable to submit another one, and a judge will amend it on their own. But those are the options that they would have. So yes, they would. You can't depend on the judge to take the issue up or the district attorney.
Thank you, Shalane.
If we go through, so the last question is, so people won't
One
be
thing
going for,
too.
yeah, go
Just
ahead.
was sorry, I was couldn't get off mute. It's just to be a heads up for folks that have innocent claims in, you will probably run into the same problems that many people have ran into in Philadelphia, and that is they won't move on the resentencing, especially if it's in the court while you have a pending claim of innocence in. There have been some people that sat for years after the Miller decision with juvenile lifers who are continuing to fight their PCRA on their innocent claims. And even when they tried to amend it, they still had their resentencing put on hold until their innocent claims were met. I think that's incredibly unfair. Um, I wish there was some legal minds that could get together, maybe to try and figure out a way to prevent that from happening to this group of life sentence prisoners who are going to potentially who could be facing resentencing in a court. Um, the flip side of that, if it was to go automatically to a parole board, you wouldn't have that issue. You would just have to go in front of the parole board and be very strategic in how you talk about empathy for the victim while also maintaining your innocence. Many have done that and have gotten out, but that is something that I think larger legal minds than ours, or that might not be the appropriate term, but I think more different legal experts should probably weigh in on. It could also be something we might even be able to resolve with independent district attorneys too as well. So we should think about that too in the long run as well. So I just wanted to flag that because that was a legitimate issue many juvenile lifers went through.
It's just to add on to that, a resentencing hearing is not a new trial, right? They will go back to court. They will be in front of a judge. There will be a DA plus their defense. So in some ways, it'll look like a trial, but it's what it says. It's a resentencing. The conviction stays the same. They don't look back at the facts of the conviction, and they're not there to second guess that. And it's the judge can't even do that if they wanted to. They couldn't overturn it or anything. They're just there to say that sentence doesn't exist anymore. We're giving you a new individual one based on your original case, based on some other factors.
Yeah, so there's a question in the chat. So people won't be going before the judge individually. How can each case be looked at for its unique circumstances? So I do want to say, even if there's resentencing, people still have to go through parole. So like this is going to be like a lower burden for people to get past. Like, you know, the court, like this resentencing, like the court gives you a new sentence, but you still have to go through parole in order to get released. And so it's not going to be like automatic after you get a new sentence that you're going to get released. You still have to go through parole. And so like what this bill is doing is kind of skipping that step through the courts and you're going straight to parole. That being said, the parole board does consider, you know, each individual as well. But they're more considering their readiness for release, which is, you know, I think overall better for defendants. for people, incarcerated people. Are there any more questions that we missed? What is a PCRA? So a PCRA is a post-conviction relief.
Just
Let's
a
see.
fancy word
Yeah,
for an appeal.
yeah,
Just the Pennsylvania word for an appeal.
yeah, appeal, yeah.
A motion that happens after trial is over. So that's actually a good point. Is a lot of people, if you're talking to your loved ones or whatever, they're going to talk about PCRAs that they have out for innocence claims or for things like that. The PCRA we're talking about for this is just the one that will allow them to say, hey, the Supreme Court ruled this way. That means that we can now petition for seeing parole or, sorry, for resentencing. So when we've been throwing around PCRA here, that's usually what we mean.
So is it likely that at resentencing, they would be on parole for the rest of their lives? I think Salim probably is best able to answer this question.
Yeah, and JT could also weigh in as well if he's on the call. Look, that is the yes, they would be under this bill. Many of us on this call are presently on parole for life. There is legislation, however, that we are working on that would terminate that long parole that we hope to pass. But that's the trade-off, y'all. And listen, like if we could somehow in negotiations going on possibly get rid of that life tail, we would do it for personal reasons as well as for obvious reasons. But as it stands now, yeah, you would be or your loved one would be subjected to a lifetime parole. I will tell you that considering what we all went through, many people I've spoken to on the inside right now would gladly trade life on parole out here than life without parole on the inside. So this is where community support is really important to make sure that reentry programs are present for people coming home and that they get the support they need in this transition. But it is something that they will have to contend with. But there is advocacy to end it, and if people want to plug into that advocacy, JT, can you put the sign-in link in the chat so that people could get involved in that? We do have a bill in the state legislature that Andre Carroll is championing that would terminate long-term parole, not just for lifers, but for many people throughout Pennsylvania, because, the reality is there's people who have been home for 20 years and are still on parole. So we're trying to terminate long-term parole in general for people.
I do think that one of the things that we need to consider also is that it's a big push, that we're doing a big push to end lifetime parole. I saw what somebody said in the chat, what does it actually do? Well, from their perspective, it gives them an opportunity to keep track of lifers, of people on parole, for the rest of their life. From our perspective, it hinders you from doing certain things of becoming a full citizen, of being free to move freely. Like if you on parole and you go outside the county, I live in Philadelphia, and if I go to Atlantic City, I can get a parole violation and go back to jail. Just that far. I mean, without even thinking, you could cross the line on Cheltenham Avenue and be in Montgomery County. That's a parole violation, right? So we are actively attacking that, and hopefully, like Salim just said, will prevail on this legislation. But one thing to be remembered is it's not going to happen without participation, right? From not only the people that are on parole, but their families also. It would take me all night to tell you some of the pitfalls of being on parole for the rest of your life. And we're talking about people may come home and live another 40 years, 50 years, and they'll be on parole every single day.
Thank you, JT. One thing we also might do is do a seminar just on this for family members to, once we get an idea of what happens, I think we will put this together, something like this, so family members could be educated. Because JT is right. Something as simple as going out to eat to a restaurant that serves alcohol and someone at your table is drinking, if you had a nut PO, they could bother you about that. Now, that is the extreme example, but this is how stringent these restrictions are. But you can move around them. And look, y'all, many of us have. So I don't want people to like be sitting here sweating or stressing about their loved one coming home on lifetime parole. Trust me, it is something that they will be able to deal with very easily. But we will also make sure people are armed with the knowledge of what it is. I did see one question about what about being transferred to the state their family is. Yes, you can do that. Pennsylvania has done that. I know several juvenile lifers that got transferred to North Carolina, other states while they were on the inside. The key is to show that your primary family support is in that state, and it is something that they can initiate before they are released as well. So yes, they can. What I would recommend is that you contact them and ask them to talk to their counselor, because that is what initiates the process first. So ask them to talk to their counselor if they have family in another state and if they want to be transferred there for parole, because that's the first step to that process. There's nothing you can do out here in regards to that process. They have to do it in there.
Yeah, I don't want to get like people too discouraged about parole and like the lifetime parole. Like there are hundreds of people out here that are living their lives and like, including my husband. Like I'm married to someone who is on lifetime parole, and like, you know, it can be, annoying and a hindrance, but also like, we're out here living our lives, and including Salim and like JT, and so your loved one is still going to be able
Roxanne,
to live
don't
their
be
life.
putting my business. Don't be putting my business out there like that, Roxanne.
Yeah, but yeah, like your
And
loved one is
also,
going to be able to do, like, we'll see like what they want to do. Like parole is like a pain in the butt, right? But also like parole also has like, they're not, I found like they're not super concerned usually about like people that have served a long time in prison, and they have other issues you know that are more pressing, that they're more worried about. And so like, I don't know, I don't want people to worry about that, and we are working on a solution to that as well.
Definitely, I second that. That is not. It's a problem, but it's not something for people to worry about. Do not worry about that.
Yeah. 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 Is there any more questions that people have that we didn't answer? I know there was a lot in the chat, but
no, I just
oh,
wanted to say this, Celine, someone had made mention about, because we do know of several people that got transferred. We're in the process of being transferred. Some of them we caught too late, but what help is, like Celine said, having them speak with their counselor, and also having a meaningful relationship with the state representative. That state representative will advocate for your loved one. It's been done. We've done it. When someone was in lieu of being transferred out of state, right? And also was another one who was in lieu of being transferred to another facility. And so we had a couple state reps go up and advocate for them, showing them the importance of them staying here due to family, mother, father, whatever, who were older and couldn't travel as far, can't travel that far. And one of them actually ended up getting moved to SDI Chester. So you have means of ways of help in regards to transportation. You could do a mass call and just have a couple of people call up there. So there's solutions to assisting with them trying to move your loved one, if that comes about.
Yeah. I do also like when I think, there are a lot of questions about, people don't know. So we're talking about two different like paths here. Like one, the bill would people through parole automatically. And then like if that doesn't happen, we have to go through resentencing. So there's two different paths we're talking about, which might get a little bit confusing. If people, if the bill gets passed, people don't need to file appeals. They don't need to file a PCRA. This is only in the case if a bill doesn't get passed and they have to go through resentencing. And so I hope that clarifies some things for people. I see Tree Muldrow has their hand up.
Oh, can you hear me? I'm sorry. I was just wondering, is there
Yeah.
a program for especially older people that are trying to get parole that don't have a family? Is there like almost like a foster family system where people can get support from non-related people that, will look after them, give them a place to live, that kind of thing, or just be a, mentor and companion, not necessarily former somebody else on parole or former lifer, but I'm just thinking that a lot of older people, age out, they don't have family. They may not have children because they're incarcerated at a young age, that kind of thing. And I was just wondering if there's something like that.
So I believe if someone doesn't have a home plan and a place they go to, they would go to the halfway house, but Celine might be able to answer that better than I.
I'm
Yeah,
thinking post halfway house, like to really get out and, live their life.
yeah, that's a good question. I just know that they transitioned them to the halfway house. I know of some who have been transitioned into senior care, especially once they have gotten their benefits, Social Security, health care, Medicaid all set up. I don't have to tell people how challenging it can be to navigate the healthcare system in this country.
Mm-hmm.
So we would probably have to bring in some experts who could talk more about that. What I do know is that yeah, if they don't have family, they'll go to the halfway house. Now they can stay there for a long time. Um, and also, like I said, I do know once they got their benefits and all that set up, then they get moved over to like Social Security. People come in and they help them get set up with housing through their insurance, where they'll pay like 30% of their Social Security into housing. But this is an area, like I said, that I'm not an expert at. And we would probably have to reach out to maybe even someone from the halfway house to talk about this. And, these questions coming up are really good questions that I think we should be putting a pin in because the reentry is really the most important part. And we do want to have family members prepared for this and also people coming home prepared for this. So let's put a pin in that, y'all, to see if we could check into those services that could be available because you're right. Many of these folks have been home 30, 40, and in prison 30 or 40 years, and they're coming home to a completely different landscape, and many of them are coming home to no families at all.
Right. I'd be interested in something like that, training for something like that, just to, my family too. You know what I'm saying? Like have just a support family, not necessarily they would live with us, but just so they have family. I mean, that's just even if they're in a halfway house, they still have visitors, they have family, they have, pseudo grandchildren, whatever, whatever the case may be. And I was just wondering if there was something like that in place. Thanks, Celine.
That's a good point, Miss Tree. Actually, we've been there. Cabby is that. We've been there support. We've been there family. Also, when that a issue like that rises, I think Liz and a couple other people put up an email in regards to someone coming home. They need, a home plan. And so some of us may have connections. I would say put on the email. Some of us have connections that know people and um where they could go and stay, the home plan to be approved. It might be like transitional housing that's not connected with the Department of Corrections, right? Because we're not going to even talk about where they send you and we're not going to even go there. So if I would suggest anybody who has a loved one that coming home and needs a home plan and they're not able to stay with them. Some of us on that listserv may have other connections versus them that's approved, right? Living versus them going to a CC center or a transitional center that the Department of Corrections might refer them to. That experience has not been good. The places that the Department of Corrections sends people, they have not been good at all. So that would be my suggestion. Put it on a list serve. You never know who might have a connection because it's worked, right? That's my whole plan is for people not to have to go to any place that the Department of Corrections refer them to, from Gardenzia to certain private owners. We have really bad experiences with that. So my suggestion was to put it on this service, someone be able to assist in that capacity.
And there's one
So
question
I
that
see that Jeanette has her. Yeah, go
all
ahead.
right, and one thing
Go
to
ahead.
that question though, Roxanne, about if a bill gets passed, parole is given automatic. Nothing is automatic with parole, y'all. So that's an easy answer. I just wanted to get that out the way. Nothing is automatic
Yeah.
with parole.
Oh, true.
Yeah, Jeanette, you had your hand up.
So this is like an off the question. My husband, when he was initially sentenced, was sentenced to second degree. But I guess there was a fire at the courthouse where his records were, and when they put them back in, they changed his sentence to first. So he's fighting that. Would that still be, being as his original sentence was second degree, would he still fall in this Derek Lee thing?
You said that it was a fire. He was convicted a second. It was a fire, destroyed all his records, and then he's listed as first degree.
Yeah, he's now listed as first degree. So he's going through the courthouse trying to get them to rechange the records because they had proof of what his original sentence and stuff was. But when it was put in digitally, they put it to first.
I don't know if
I
that's
think he would
something
need
that
to get a lawyer.
you would have
Yeah.
to get a lawyer for that. I think that is something that's kind of beyond our scope right here. That's more
Yeah.
investigative than legal. And
Yeah.
he can, petition the court though, because see, here's the thing: if he has to go into court, all that's fair game. So if it goes into court, then he has to petition the court for an investigator, in addition to a mitigation specialist to go back in and find those records. So that's something that he would have to submit to the court. When it comes to the Department of Corrections, he would have grounds, even if this is moved over to parole, he would also have grounds because he would have a right to a parole opportunity, if he in fact was convicted of second degree. So he could petition the court for a private investigator to track that down. It would probably be an uphill battle, but those are some issues that he could raise.
Yeah, I mean, because he's been in there 31 years. And when we filed a motion for them to correct his records because they didn't even have his birthday right. They still don't. But like I said, when they edit them in, and you can look on his docket sheet for when they actually put them in, they literally changed his sentence from second to first.
If I can add a point, you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if I may add a point to what Jeanette is speaking about, you're right as far as changing the record. It's like a motion. You said motion with the correct the record, but
Yeah.
it's something also where you can it seems like a simple fix. This is not legal advice. I'm just giving you something to think about. A quick fix. A judge could change. Make a mistake. They made a mistake, like the record room. They made a mistake, so you can file a petition. It's called a quorum novus, which actually allows you to go in there and change a mistake made by a judge or made by the clerk of court. You know what I mean? You
It's
might want to
called a
look
what?
and think about it. It's called a petition for quorum novus.
Spell that.
And it,
I'm sorry.
CORAMNOBIS.
Quorum novus.
Right, and it was a factual situation similar to what you was explaining. A person was basically had a sentence of he got convicted of second degree. The judge had made a mistake and put third degree in the record, and he simply filed this motion. However, the judge came back and put the wrong and gave first degree, and they corrected that. So that was an easy fix. It wasn't had anything to do with any legal issues. It had everything to do with just a simple mistake that was made, and that's what it seems that you're speaking to.
Okay. Yeah, we didn't know what it was called, but we did file a petition with the courthouse where his stuff was to request a change the record to what it was initially instead of what they decided to put up there.
Okay.
All
Okay.
right. Okay. So it is 7 o'clock, everybody. Is there any final questions? If not, we're gonna break for the evening. It's like we will be posting this video on our YouTube, but also you can, reach out to any of us that's, anytime if you have more questions.
Roxanne,
And
Erica Riggins
yeah,
had her hand up.
I have two questions actually. What is King bench power in PA? And also, is there any way we can get those state legislators, council people on this Zoom, on any of these Zooms? Can we invite them in to the conversation with the families?
So the first one is yes, we can. That could be easy. We could arrange that for maybe the next debrief. So that won't be a problem. It's just a matter of who we invite and also their schedule. The King's Bench petition is basically an extraordinary petition to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court where you basically bypass the Court of Common Pleas and the Superior Court and take the issue directly to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. That has been something that is being considered in response to the delay, but if they actually stall this out and don't come to an agreement, it is something that could be considered. Although you would really have to have some extreme circumstances for the Pennsylvania Supreme Court to take that case and rule on it.
Thank you for that.
All right, we're gonna get ready to wrap this up, y'all.
Yeah.
We'll send a follow-up. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Roxanne. You can finish it.
Hi, yes.
yeah, just the one.
Quick question, please. I'm sorry, guys. So my brother had a Zoom meeting with his trial judge and his public defender and members of the family of the victim. And I basically just want to know, like, what are next steps after that? Like, is that good signs, or is it more to come after that?
I mean, it depends, right? So, like, if a bill gets passed, like, it's good that they're in communication with the victim's family, I guess, because like victim input is considered in the parole process.
Mm-hmm.
And like, defense lawyers, NDAs do give input as well. So in the parole process as well. So like none of that's, bad. And
Okay.
right now we're still waiting for what the remedy is going to be, right? So
Right.
if the remedy is through parole or if it's through the courts, I think it's a positive thing that he's had those meetings.
Okay.
But right now we still have to wait to see what the remedy is.
Okay. All right.
But yeah, I think we're gonna break here for the night, everybody. Thank you for coming. And like I said, you can reach out if you have questions. I believe we put John's number in the chat, so he's open to taking calls. We will be sending up a follow-up email to everybody. Like I said, if you're in Philly, we're having on Saturday a little brunch for people who have family members inside. And so it would be an opportunity to, meet with other people who have loved ones inside and to build community. We also encourage you to reach out to your legislator and let them know this is an issue that you care about, And we'll have an email that has all of these links that you can access very easily. And like I said, if you're available on Saturday at 1 o'clock, we'd love to see you.
Where?
This is in Philly at Triple Bottom Brewery.
Also, just for clarity, that is mainly for new family folks who have come into the movement, haven't really been to meetings, haven't met other new family members. So it's more of a smaller, intimate brunch for like newer family members who had just come into the movement or just learned about the lead decision.
Right. I'm gonna send some. Okay.
All right.
Thank you. Thank y'all.
All right, everybody. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you.